While the shop owner was counting money, three armed robbers suddenly stormed in, waving their guns and demanding cash. But instead of surrendering, the owner bravely fought back in self-defense. Caught off guard by the resistance, chaos broke out inside the store. In a panic, one of the armed criminals was forced to crawl out through the door just to escape, a humiliating end to their daring attempt. A shocking armed robbery unfolded just as a woman exited a store when 5 to 6 men suddenly rushed inside. The security guard attempted to close the door to block them, but was unable to do so. Witnesses reported seeing one of the robbers carrying a very large hammer. A 70-year-old man recognized the imminent danger and acted swiftly and decisively. Upon seeing the man draw his gun, the robbers panicked, scrambling over each other in a desperate attempt to flee. An armed robber stormed into a bakery, brandishing his gun and filling the room with sheer terror. Customers screamed, staff froze, and chaos threatened to erupt. But his reign of fear lasted only moments. Like lightning, police officers rushed in, confronting the gunman head-on. In a dramatic clash, they took him down with flawless precision before a single shot could be fired. The bakery was saved, the criminal was handcuffed, and the crowd erupted in relief as order was restored in the blink of an eye. On a deserted street, a bold and shameless robbery unfolded when two criminals surrounded a man riding his motorbike. One of them grew aggressive, threatening the victim while rummaging through his belongings. But what the thieves didn't know was that karma was already closing in. From the distance, an unmarked police vehicle crept silently into view. In an instant, plainclothes officers leapt into action. Four robbers tried to break into a house at night, fully convinced their plan would succeed, but their dark intentions were swiftly crushed. A group of robbers thought they had found an easy target, but they picked the wrong woman. Within seconds, she reacted with razor-sharp instincts, firing 3 quick shots in self-defense. Stunned and terrified, the robbers scattered in panic, left with no choice but to flee the scene empty-handed. Three robbers smashed through the doors of a hotel, ready to snatch everything in sight. They thought it would be an easy job, but instead they came face to face with a fearless female guard. With steady hands, she fired a warning shot, sending the criminals into a panic. In an instant, their bold plan crumbled to pieces, all thanks to the courage of one brave guard. After a long day at work, the crowd at the bus stop was restless but calm until chaos exploded. Out of nowhere, a motorbike thief came tearing in, waving a gun and cornering a terrified woman. Instinct took over. She shoved her valuables behind a wall, praying to escape his sights. A young man clenched his fists, ready to step up. But before he could act, fate delivered a hero. A driver swerved straight into the scene, cutting off the thief's escape in one fearless move. Panic struck. The criminal ditched his motorbike and bolted, but he never stood a chance. Neighbors surged after him, chasing him down and pinning him to the ground. In minutes, the danger was crushed, and peace returned to the street. Three men were strolling down the street, unaware that danger was closing in. Suddenly, two motorbikes charged at them, one rider leaping off and leveling a gun straight at their chests. But before he could even open his mouth to demand a thing, the script flipped. The targets exploded into action, moving faster than the criminals could react. In seconds, the hunters became the hunted, and the robbery collapsed before it even began. It was a peaceful afternoon at a sidewalk cafe, until terror struck. A man suddenly stormed up to a couple, brandishing a gun and demanding compliance. But in the blink of an eye, the tables turned. The husband launched himself forward, grappling for control of the weapon. Calm and composed, his wife stepped back, drawing her own firearm with flawless precision. Caught off guard by their fearless response, the would-be robber froze, then bolted in sheer panic. In seconds, the danger was gone, and the courageous couple stood victorious, their bravery turning a moment of terror into a stunning triumph. Two armed robbers stormed into a travel agency, restraining employees and coercing them to reveal information to access a banking app for unauthorized transfers. Upon receiving the report, the civil police swiftly deployed units to the scene. Once on site, officers immediately rescued the hostages, apprehended both robbers, and seized crucial evidence, including weapons and stolen phones. Security footage captured the tense moment. A motorbike thief zeroed in on a woman walking alone, menacing her and demanding her belongings. Terrified, the victim complied, fearing for her safety. Just when it seemed the robber would make a clean getaway, fate took a sharp turn. From a nearby parked car, an off-duty police officer had been watching the scene unfold. In a flash, he sprang into action, rushing straight at the suspect and cutting off his escape. Within seconds, the officer overpowered the stunned criminal and forced him to the ground. A brazen car robbery attempt was dramatically cut short, with the entire ordeal captured on video. The footage shows how situational awareness and lightning-fast reactions can turn the tables on an attacker in a matter of seconds. But the chaos also carries a sobering warning. Once the assailant flees, the danger shifts. Chasing or striking back in that moment can blur the line between defense and retaliation, posing risks not only to personal safety, but also to the law. Two criminals disguised as rescue workers thought they had devised the perfect plan: get close to a man's family and strike when least expected. But they never anticipated the fierce courage of his wife. In an instant, she exploded into action. With fearless determination, she delivered a flurry of powerful blows, shielding her husband and child from danger. The thugs, stunned and outmatched, staggered back in panic. A couple was lost in their own world, walking hand in hand, when danger crashed into their perfect moment. A motorbike screeched to a halt, the rider pulling out a gun and demanding their money. But instead of surrendering, the young man's instincts ignited. With fearless precision, he lunged at the thief, jumped onto the bike, and executed a textbook Brazilian takedown, pinning the criminal before he could even react. One bold move turned a nightmare into triumph, and proved this boyfriend was every bit the hero his partner needed. What started as a tense street approach quickly flipped upside down. Two men closed in, their intent clear and threatening. But before they could make a move, their target acted first. With lightning speed, he pulled a firearm, a single motion that froze the attackers in place. Staring down the barrel, the would-be assailants had no choice but to back off, retreating in defeat without a single shot fired. Two ruthless thugs thought they had found the perfect victim, a lone young man walking with his backpack. They struck fast, snatching at his belongings with brute force. But their plan collapsed in spectacular fashion. Out of nowhere, police cars stormed onto the scene, sirens screaming and tires screeching. A calm afternoon at a small fashion boutique erupted into chaos when two armed robbers stormed inside. One of them, eyes cold and merciless, raised his gun at the young shop owner, snarling for money. Paralyzed with fear, she could only stare as danger closed in. Then, thunder on the stairs. Her husband charged down from the upper floor, gun in hand. In a split second, he pulled the trigger. The crack of gunfire shattered the suffocating silence, forcing the attackers back. In that decisive moment, his fearless action shielded his wife from a tragedy that seemed inevitable only seconds before. Under the cover of darkness, two robbers launched a ruthless ambush, cornering a lone man and holding him at their mercy. The night seemed lost, danger closing in, until courage turned the tide. A routine parking stop turned into a heart-pounding encounter when a man was suddenly ambushed by two suspects leaping from a nearby vehicle. The assailants attempted to intimidate their target, but what they didn't expect was his lightning-fast response. Caught off guard by his fearless reaction, the armed duo panicked, abandoning their plan and fleeing in haste. The dramatic footage not only shows how quickly danger can erupt in broad daylight, but also how a moment of bold instinct can flip the script on would-be criminals. As a family arrived at the gate of their home, an armed robber suddenly lunged, threatening the wife in a ruthless attempt to snatch her purse and money. But in that split second, the husband acted without hesitation. Drawing his gun, he fired in defense of his loved ones, a swift and decisive move that ended the threat. Thanks to his courage, his family was unharmed, while the criminal was left to face the full force of the law. It was a quiet night, the street empty, a lone woman waiting beneath the dim glow of a street lamp. Then, chaos. Headlights sliced through the darkness, blinding her as a man leapt from a car, gun raised, charging straight at her. But the attacker miscalculated. Instead of fear, she answered with speed and precision. Her sudden, decisive movement stunned him. His nerve broke instantly. Frozen in shock, the would-be robber bolted back into the car. Within seconds, the vehicle vanished into the night. What began as a simple father-daughter chat on the sidewalk suddenly turned into chaos. Out of nowhere, a group of robbers charged straight at them. The quick-thinking girl bolted to safety, while her father stayed behind, calm, sharp, and ready. In one swift motion, he slammed the car window shut, then launched into action. With fierce determination, he stood his ground, transforming fear into courage. At that moment, he was more than just a parent. He was a warrior. Security footage from a parking lot captured the terrifying moment. A gang of armed robbers charged toward a car, ready to strike. Their plan seemed unstoppable, until the vehicle's owner made a split-second decision. Sensing danger, he drew his firearm and fired a single warning shot. The crack of gunfire ripped through the night, sending shockwaves through the attackers. Stunned and panicked, the would-be thieves scattered in chaos, stumbling over each other as they fled. What began as a coordinated ambush ended in total collapse, one man's quick thinking turning a deadly threat into a humiliating retreat. Two cunning thieves tried to play it smart, loitering by a motorbike and pretending to chat, setting up the perfect trap. But their scheme took a bizarre twist when two other crooks stumbled right into it. In this cutthroat turf, it feels like there are four thieves packed into every square meter. Security camera footage captures a tense confrontation after a routine store visit suddenly turned dangerous. An off-duty police officer standing among unsuspecting customers was confronted by armed suspects attempting to seize control of the convenience store. With split-second precision, the officer intervened, stopping the robbers before the situation could escalate. His decisive action dismantled the plot and kept bystanders safe. While buying food for his family, a man suddenly found himself face to face with an armed robber. Confronted at gunpoint, he acted swiftly, drawing his own weapon to protect himself and his loved ones. Thanks to his quick and decisive action, he overpowered the assailant and successfully stopped the crime, keeping his family safe. On a typical day at a small-town coffee shop, patrons were enjoying their drinks and chatting peacefully when two men unexpectedly walked in, seemingly intent on committing a robbery. However, two alert customers quickly pulled out their firearms and aimed at the intruders. Confronted with armed resistance, the would-be robbers panicked and fled the scene immediately. A group of thieves thought they had it easy, breaking into an apartment garage and swiping bicycles as if on a shopping spree. But what they didn't know was that their every move was being tracked on surveillance. A man and a young companion spotted the crime in real time, and without hesitation they raced down in the elevator to confront the culprits. Then came the twist. The elevator doors slid open, and out stepped the young man, wielding a shimmering katana. In that instant, the scene shifted from petty theft to a moment straight out of a samurai film. And to those thieves, one piece of advice: run, and don't look back. A man was just about to unlock his front door when a motorbike suddenly screeched to a halt. Two robbers leapt off and charged at him, aiming a gun and demanding his belongings. But just as the situation turned dire, a car from the opposite direction came racing in. The unexpected rescuers jumped out, rushing to the man's aid and giving the armed thugs a lesson they won't soon forget. What began as a bold robbery attempt ended in chaos, with justice arriving at the perfect moment. Security footage reveals the tense moment a white car pulled into a parking lot, unknowingly tailed by a pair of armed robbers. In an instant, two men leapt out, guns drawn, and rushed the vehicle. But instead of panicking, the driver stayed cool under fire. With steady nerves and sharp instincts, he outmaneuvered the attackers, slipping away before they could pull the trigger. The robbers were left stunned and empty-handed, proof that sometimes calmness is the sharpest weapon of all. A quiet walk turned into a nightmare when a motorbike riding robber suddenly sped up, brandishing a gun and demanding cash. The couple froze for a split second. Then everything changed. Without hesitation, the man lunged forward, shielding the woman at his side. In an instant, fear gave way to raw courage as he confronted the armed attacker head-on, refusing to let the robber dictate their fate. What began as an ordinary sale turned into sudden chaos. A man, posing as a customer, snatched a piece of gold jewelry and bolted for the exit. But he underestimated the courage of the shop attendant. In a split second, she vaulted over the glass counter with fearless determination, sprinting after the thief through the street. Her bravery, combined with the swift reaction of nearby locals, turned the chase into a dramatic takedown. The thief was caught. A man in white was standing on the sidewalk when a man in blue suddenly ran up, brandishing a gun and attempting to rob him. To ensure his safety, the victim cooperated and sought help. A nearby passerby intervened, opening fire on the robber in an effort to stop him. Despite the intervention, the robber managed to escape. In a brief but tense encounter, a would-be thief made a critical mistake. Attempting a robbery, he unknowingly chose an undercover police officer as his target. The result was swift and decisive. The criminal was instantly apprehended, facing the consequences of his reckless actions. It all unfolded in seconds. Just as a woman arrived at her gate, two robbers lunged from behind, determined to snatch her car. Shocked and powerless, she seemed moments away from losing everything. Then came the twist. Her husband stormed into the scene at exactly the right moment. His sheer presence, fierce, commanding, broke the robber's resolve in an instant. One of the thieves fled so fast he looked like he was racing in the Olympics. At first glance, he seemed like any other customer, calm, casual, pretending to browse. But in a split second, the facade dropped. The man pulled a gun, pointing it at the shop owner and demanding cash. Fearing for his life, the owner complied, while the robber stormed further inside, rifling through shelves for anything of value. But the criminal's arrogance blinded him to the danger. The shop owner, patient and alert, waited for the perfect moment. Then he struck, firing in self-defense and catching the assailant completely off guard. A motorbike screeched to a halt beside a white car that had just pulled over. In seconds, the rider pulled a gun, aiming it at the driver and demanding valuables. But before the crime could unfold, an unexpected twist shattered the robber's plan. A bystander, witnessing the danger, leapt into action. With fearless speed and decisive force, he overpowered the assailant, ending the threat before it could escalate. The street, once frozen in fear, erupted in relief as a hero turned the tide. Racing up on a motorbike, a gun-wielding thief targeted a young couple as they stood by their parked car. He pointed the weapon menacingly, demanding they hand everything over. But the woman didn't break. Calmly stepping aside, she placed her trust in her partner. The tables turned in seconds. What began as an act of intimidation ended with the gunman pinned and pleading for mercy, his crime crushed by his own instant karma. Three robbers thought an elderly man would be an easy target, but they were dead wrong. In a shocking twist, the would-be victim refused to give in. With grit and determination, he fought back fiercely, flipping the script on his attackers. Outmatched and humiliated, the carjackers stumbled away, learning a brutal lesson they'll never forget. A female police officer was leaving for work in her car when three suspicious men were seen casing her from nearby. Initially, the situation seemed calm, but suddenly one of the men threatened her with a gun. Shots were fired, and the suspects immediately fled the scene. The officer then exited her vehicle to assess the situation, finding that the men had already run a considerable distance. A bold and dangerous armed home invasion quickly turned in an unexpected direction when the intruder overlooked one critical detail: a man quietly inside the house. In a split second, he acted. Drawing his weapon in self-defense, he rescued his friend, who was being held at gunpoint. The sudden counterattack turned the tables instantly, leaving the criminal with no chance to continue the attack. These two guys seemed better suited for a comedy act than a life of crime. In a bizarre attempt to make their robbery more dramatic, they rode a motorbike straight into the store, swerved theatrically, and leapt off to draw their guns. But their performance quickly flopped. Police arrived in the middle of the act, and within seconds, one of the would-be robbers was slammed to the ground and taken into custody. A peaceful evening stroll nearly turned into tragedy when a stranger suddenly crept up from behind, lunging to snatch the baby from the mother's arms. But in that split second, the father sprang into action. With instinct and determination, he fought off the attacker, shielding his family from danger. Surveillance footage reveals a chilling confrontation: an armed robber closing in on a car owner, weapon ready. But in a flash, the would-be victim refused to be cornered. Acting with lightning speed, the owner drew and fired in self-defense, turning the ambush into a fight for survival. The sudden counterattack shattered the robber's nerve. Overwhelmed and outmatched, he abandoned his plan and fled into the night. A brazen attempt to steal a motorbike erupted at a gas station when a suspect targeted a man refueling his bike. But quick thinking turned the tables. A sharp-eyed station employee spotted the danger and sprinted to alert patrolling officers nearby. As the suspect scrambled to start the bike and flee, police stormed in with perfect timing. Within moments, they had the thief pinned down, forcing him to surrender on the spot. He was infamous as the most brazen troublemaker in town, always stirring chaos, snatching from corner shops, and slipping away without consequence. It was a scene straight out of a movie. A man in a wheelchair suddenly brandished a gun, gripping it with his feet as though he'd trained for the moment. Shocked bystanders froze as he waved the weapon, trying to pull off an unlikely heist. But the drama didn't last long. The gun was nothing more than a fake, and authorities swiftly moved in. Within moments, the bizarre robbery collapsed, leaving behind more disbelief than danger. It was an ordinary afternoon on a crowded street when danger struck without warning. Two young women were walking side by side, unaware of the threat closing in. Suddenly, a motorbike screeched to a halt in front of them. The rider, eyes fixed and menacing, demanded a phone at gunpoint. Terrified, one of the women reluctantly surrendered the device. But fate had other plans. A pickup truck driver, witnessing the crime unfold just yards away, made a split-second decision. With a sharp turn of the wheel, he swung his vehicle across the road, cutting off the thief's only escape route. An off-duty police officer was suddenly caught off guard by a motorbike robber who tried to strike fast and escape. But training kicked in instantly. The officer reacted with lightning speed, moving to block the attack. In a tense struggle, the robber's plan unraveled as the officer fought back with precision and determination. A quiet afternoon shattered in an instant when a gang of armed robbers forced their way into a family's home. Bursting through the door, they thought the house was theirs for the taking. But they made one fatal miscalculation: the family's loyal dog. With explosive courage, the canine hero lunged at the intruders, biting, chasing, and driving them into chaos. Overwhelmed and terrified, the robbers fled the scene, their plan in ruins. That day, it wasn't the police or the owners who saved the home. It was the fearless dog, hailed as the true guardian and hero. A masked man wearing a hood entered a restaurant and threatened a female cashier with a gun in an attempted robbery. Fortunately, a police couple was dining at the restaurant at the time. Reacting quickly, the officers successfully chased down the robber, preventing the crime. Their swift action demonstrates courage and professionalism, earning admiration from
One of those
onlookers.
things when we train not to, be in front of each other. It's always going to stand out. It's going to bring back the date night that turned crazy.
The couple was going home in Itakura, in the eastern part of Snow Polo. Two robbers came on a motorbike threatening the couple. These robbers were very aggressive and they had guns. They wanted to rob the couple's motorbike, but the couple delayed to buy time to find help. But there was no help here. They lost patience and attacked the wife, and the wife punched them a few times. The wife's fierceness was amazing. The robbers started to panic and ran away. As the man opened the door to his house, keeping a careful eye on his surroundings, robbers suddenly stormed in. Thinking fast, he reacted immediately and decisively, taking control of the situation before it could spiral out of hand. His quick action left the intruders with no chance to escalate the chaos. The cashier and an elderly security guard going about their routine until chaos erupted. A man clad in black stormed in, pistol in hand, and barked out his demand. This was a robbery, but instead of fear, the old guard answered with fire. Slowly, he slipped off his glasses, his eyes narrowing with razor-sharp determination. Then he struck, swift, precise, and devastating. Age meant nothing in that moment. His reflexes were honed, his strength undeniable, his will unshakable. The young gunman never stood a chance. Within moments, the so-called predator was on the ground, overpowered and captured by the very man he had underestimated. A quiet trip to the bank turned into a high-stakes chase when a 73-year-old man and his stepson were followed home by would-be robbers. Sensing danger closing in, the elderly driver refused to become a victim. With quick instincts and steady hands, he slammed the accelerator, swerved sharply, and outmaneuvered the attackers in a pulse-pounding escape. Proving age is no barrier to courage. A quiet ride turned explosive when a young man on his motorcycle was suddenly ambushed at an intersection. Two armed robbers roared up from behind, one brandishing a gun and pointing it directly at him. But instead of freezing, the young rider reacted with lightning speed, leaping off his bike and diving behind a utility pole. In a split second, he launched a fierce counterattack. The man was calmly backing his car into the garage when a white vehicle screeched to a halt outside. Armed robbers had arrived. In seconds, two men leapt out and charged straight into the garage, desperate to hijack the car before the automatic door could close. But what they didn't know was that the homeowner was ready, waiting for them to strike. Without hesitation, he drew his weapon and opened fire in self-defense. The robbers instantly realized their fatal mistake. Panic took over and they bolted, fleeing for their lives under a hail of gunfire. Chaos erupted when a group of criminals stormed into a bar, waving guns and terrorizing customers as they stripped them of their belongings. But what they didn't know, one of the patrons was an off-duty police officer. Without hesitation, he sprang into action. First, he chased down and captured a robber trying to escape, then turned back to subdue the rest inside. In minutes, the tables had turned. The violent stick-up was crushed, the criminals overpowered, and every customer walked out safe. Vitor Bala, one of the nation's most notorious shoplifters, thought he was walking into another easy score. But waiting inside were plainclothes officers who closed in and arrested him before he could make a move. Bala, already known for past armed robberies that spread fear through communities and businesses, is now back behind bars. With his capture, residents can finally breathe easier, knowing a long-time menace is off the streets. A young woman was refueling her car at a gas station when a gang of robbers suddenly charged in, their vehicles speeding straight toward her. But instead of freezing in fear, she fought back with astonishing courage. In a fearless leap, she landed on her car, seizing control of the situation before the attackers could even react. An old man was refueling his car when a gang of robbers suddenly ambushed him. Without a moment's hesitation, and with the fuel pump already in his hand, he turned it on them, drenching the attackers in gasoline. It was a daring and astonishingly effective move that left the would-be criminals stunned and scrambling to escape. It was an ordinary moment at the counter, a man chatting casually with the cashier, when chaos suddenly struck. An armed robber stormed in, weapon raised, ready to take control. But in the blink of an eye, the tables turned. With razor-sharp reflexes, the man drew his gun and overpowered the criminal, slamming him flat on the ground before he could make a move. As the would-be robber lay helpless, the cashier calmly picked up the phone, calling the police with remarkable composure, as though it were just another routine day. What began as a terrifying holdup ended in swift justice. 4 men were walking down the street. A robber was riding a motorbike with a delivery bag on his back. He stopped the 4 men and pointing a gun at them. He announced that this was a robbery and that, if you want to be safe, don't do anything stupid. He started taking their money and valuables. If the 4 men had been a little more assertive, I think they could have neutralized the robber, but that didn't happen. Unexpectedly, a man across the street saw everything and immediately attacked the robber. The robber fought back weakly and abandoned his motorbike to escape. In Chicago, a store worker had something for protection. Behind the counter, someone tried to steal jewelry with a hammer and broke the display case. The employee showed they had something to protect themselves, but it didn't work right. A tense confrontation unfolded during an attempted armored car robbery. A gray car pulled up near the armored truck, and as a guard opened the truck door, an armed individual jumped out, attempting to steal a package. A struggle quickly broke out between the thief and the security guard. Shots were fired, and the would-be robber ultimately fled, empty-handed, scrambling back toward the getaway car. A young student couple was walking peacefully, hand in hand along the sidewalk, when danger struck. 2 thugs on a speeding motorbike closed in from behind. In one swift motion, the passenger leapt off, lunging at them in an attempted robbery. But fate had other plans. From the opposite lane, a red vehicle screeched to a stop. Its doors flew open, and out came unexpected heroes, guns drawn and aimed directly at the attackers. The robbers froze, their scheme collapsing in an instant. Within seconds, the terrified couple was safe, and the would-be criminals lay captured on the very street they thought they would rule. These 2 men had no interest in working, only in stealing from others. Day after day, their thoughts revolved around easy prey, quick cash, and lives shattered in their wake. For their victims, the loss wasn't just material. The robberies left scars, deep psychological wounds that lingered long after the crime itself. But today, their reckless streak may have come to an end, because honest people have the right to fight back, to defend themselves, their families, and their property. A masked man stormed into a store, brandishing a gun and barking demands for cash. Customers froze in fear as the tension spiked, but in a sudden twist, the tables turned. During a struggle, the robber lost control of his weapon, his greatest advantage gone in an instant. Here we have the so-called gas station bandit, caught in her natural habitat, fumbling with a car like it's some kind of treasure chest waiting to be cracked open. It happened in an instant. A woman was ambushed from behind, a stranger threatening her and trying to snatch her motorcycle. Fear gripped her, leaving her frozen in shock. But only for a moment. Gathering her courage, she bolted away and cried out for help. That was all it took. Bystanders rushed in, surrounding the thief and confronting him head-on. In seconds, the tables turned. The robber, who thought he had the upper hand, was left humiliated, taught a painful lesson by the very street he tried to terrorize. In Ananindeua, Brazil, two men thought they had pulled off a clean getaway after robbing a woman with what appeared to be a gun. But their victory was short-lived. Within just an hour, police, armed with security camera footage and tips from the public, tracked the motorcycle used in the heist. The net closed quickly. One suspect confessed, while the other was caught red-handed with the replica firearm and the very clothes worn during the crime. Two men thought they had found an easy target, an unattended motorbike parked outside a home. One jumped off, seized the vehicle, and tried to make his getaway, but in a flash the front door burst open. The homeowner stormed out, a gun raised and aimed squarely at the thief. The robber froze, then abandoned the bike in panic, fleeing for his life. No trigger was pulled. Fear alone was enough to stop the crime cold. This guy bought beer and didn't want to pay. The employee wanted to use the phone to call the police. He became aggressive and threw a beer bottle at her. He started to lose control and attacked her to be safe. She had to run away and he kept chasing her. She called for help from a nearby driver. The heroic driver calmly got out of the car and quickly controlled him to rescue the employee. What began as a routine night turned into chaos when two men targeted a car parked along the curb. Their plans seemed simple until everything unraveled in seconds. The vehicle's owner, refusing to be a victim, pulled a firearm and opened fire in self-defense. The sharp crack of gunfire shattered the night, sending the would-be thieves into a frenzy of fear. Panicked and unprepared for such resistance, they bolted, fleeing the scene. The would-be thief thought he had the upper hand. Posing as a customer, he casually approached the counter until, in a split second, he revealed his gun and threatened the shopkeeper. But what he didn't expect was a store owner who was faster, sharper, and completely prepared. With lightning reflexes, the owner drew his weapon and aimed with unshakable precision. A peaceful day suddenly descended into chaos when an armed robber appeared, threatening the man's family. But the father, holding his young child tightly in his arms, showed no fear. With nerves of steel and an unshakable instinct to protect, he drew his firearm and confronted the criminal head-on. In the blink of an eye, a single shot rang out, instantly neutralizing the threat. It was a powerful moment of extraordinary courage, a father's unwavering determination to protect his child from danger. A normal day at the store, suddenly, a guy wearing a motorcycle helmet walks in and announces that it is a robbery, that he is the one who committed it. The sales clerk started to panic, and the woman who entered immediately attacked the robber. The older gentleman also helped to subdue him. They actually fought this guy for about a minute before someone else finally came along to help and caught the robber. A man was withdrawing money at a small privately owned booth when a group of robbers suddenly appeared, trying to snatch his cash. Just as the situation turned dangerous, the booth owner acted without hesitation. He drew a firearm and fired to protect his customer. Startled and overwhelmed, the robbers panicked and fled the scene. Thanks to the owner's quick and decisive action, the customer escaped unharmed, and the crime was stopped on the spot. Robbery gone wrong. Armed thieves picked the wrong target. Security cameras recorded the tense moment two robbers on a motorbike cornered a white car. One leapt off, demanding money, while his partner aimed a gun at the driver of a nearby black car. But they couldn't have chosen a worse victim. In a flash, the driver fought back, neutralizing the armed robber with decisive force before sprinting after the second thug. Their plan collapsed in seconds. Security cameras captured the chilling moment a couple was ambushed by two armed men just as they stepped through their front door. Cornered and fearing for their lives, the victims complied with the robbers' demands, handing over what they could. But the criminals never saw the twist coming. A relative suddenly arrived on the scene, and with fearless determination, pounced. In a stunning reversal, one suspect was subdued on the spot, while the others bolted in sheer panic. The pregnant woman got out of the car when two robbers across the street rushed in and demanded the car key. A guy hit her twice on the head. He wanted to rob her of more money. He pulled her hair to the ground, and this guy has no humanity. The superhero immediately ran to help. The girl he kept moving and dodging. He threw things at these guys, and surprisingly, the robbers gave up. Why, I wonder if he has supernatural powers. He alone confronted three armed robbers with his bare hands. A peaceful walk between a man and his dog turned into chaos when an armed robber appeared from nowhere, gun raised and intent on a quick score. The man tried to flee as the criminal gave chase, danger closing in with every step. But before the robber could strike, loyalty struck first. The man's faithful dog lunged with fearless resolve, attacking the assailant to shield its owner. Two men on a motorbike prowled the neighborhood, circling like predators in search of prey. Their eyes locked on a lone man walking with a backpack. The perfect target, or so they thought. In a flash, the one dressed in black leapt off, ripping the bag and phone from the victim's hands in a bold snatch and grab. But the robbers had miscalculated. The man reacted instantly. With lightning speed and razor-sharp precision, he fought back. unleashing decisive counter moves that stunned the attackers. Two robbers on motorcycles suddenly closed in on a young couple. The attackers lunged, threatening to snatch their belongings, but the man refused to back down. Driven by love and raw determination, he fought with all his strength to shield his girlfriend. Just as the struggle reached its peak, help arrived from the unlikeliest place. Residents nearby rushed forward, surrounding the thieves and cutting off every escape route. In moments, the robbers were overwhelmed and captured. What began as a frightening ambush ended in a dramatic display of courage and unity, a powerful reminder that bravery and community spirit can turn the tide against crime. Two men approached a house, pretending to walk casually, until one, dressed in red, suddenly pulled a gun and charged. But the homeowner was ready. Acting with sharp awareness, he fired back in self-defense. Caught off guard, the attackers panicked and fled. One was injured during the exchange and later captured by police, ending the attempted robbery before it could escalate further. It seemed like a normal day in a quiet, small town. An elderly couple had just arrived home, ready to back their car into the garage, when danger struck. A man in black strolled up, feigning innocence while his accomplices closed in. Their target clear, the old man's car. But the would-be victims weren't easy prey. The elderly man acted with sharp instinct, moving swiftly to a safe position before launching a sudden counterattack. The man in black bolted instantly, sprinting away in fear. His partner panicked, fumbling to escape, and ended up reversing wildly out of control. Realizing his mistake, he ditched the vehicle and fled on foot. What began as a planned car robbery ended in chaos, as an elderly homeowner proved sharper, faster. The thief thought he had it all figured out. Spotting an open door, he slithered across the floor like a shadow, inching closer to the valuables. His target, a phone left on the table, ripe for the taking. But the moment his hand closed around it, his plan collapsed. Instead of an easy getaway, he found himself face to face with 4 or 5 men inside the house, and they weren't about to let him walk away. In seconds, the intruder's silent crawl turned into a desperate struggle as he was taught a harsh lesson he'll never forget. An armed robber barged into a store, brandishing a weapon and threatening everyone inside while demanding money. But his plan quickly backfired, and he soon faced the full consequences of the law, landing straight in jail.
I have nothing. Please, 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 I have nothing. Please, 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 I have nothing. Please, I'm sorry. Please, please, help, help, please, help, please, please. Get your hands up! On the ground! On the ground! On the ground! On the ground! All the way down! Your hands, it's over, it's over. You cover back, you cover back.
Panic filled the street when a little girl's head became stuck in a car window. A young man rushed to help, desperately trying to steady the glass and call for assistance, but the child's life still hung in the balance. Then another hero arrived. With lightning speed and razor-sharp focus, he sized up the danger and made his move. Using nothing but his bare hands, he shattered the window in one powerful strike, freeing the terrified girl.